The sound of a Louis Vuitton suitcase hitting the wet pavement echoed louder than the thunder overhead. Natalie shivered, not just from the freezing rain soaking her thin dress, but from the brutal words that were still ringing in her ears: barren, defective, useless. She looked up at the window of the mansion she had helped build, only to see her husband's arm wrapped around another woman. She thought her life was over. She thought she had nothing left to lose. She was wrong. A black Rolls-Royce Phantom rolled to a silent stop at the curb, the window sliding down to reveal the most dangerous man in the city. He didn't offer pity. He offered a choice. And that choice would burn her husband's world to the ground. The medical report landed on the mahogany desk with a sickening slap. It was a single piece of paper, but it held the weight of a death sentence. "Read it," Rachel said. His voice was cold, detached, the voice he used for employees. He was about to fire not the woman he had been married to for 5 years. Natalie's hands trembled as she reached for the document. The letterhead was from the Sterling Institute of Reproductive Medicine, one of the most prestigious and expensive clinics in New York. Her eyes scanned the bold text at the bottom. Irreversible ovarian failure. Probability of conception 0%. The room seemed to tilt. "Rachel, I don't understand. Dr. Sterling told me last week that my hormone levels were improving. He said," Dr. Sterling was being polite, Natalie. Rachel cut in. Standing up and walking over to the window that overlooked the sprawling estate in Greenwich, Connecticut. "He called me personally this morning. He didn't want to break your heart, so he told me the truth instead. You are broken, Natalie. You're a dead end." Natalie felt a sob choke her throat. She stood up her legs, feeling like lead. "Broken. Is that how you see me? After 5 years. After I sold my father's bakery to fund your first startup. After I worked double shifts at the firm so you could network." Rachel turned around, his face twisted in a sneer that made him look like a stranger. "That was business. This is legacy. My empire needs an heir, Natalie. I built Vanguard tech from nothing. I'm not going to let it die because my wife has a defective womb." "It's not just about a legacy, Rachel," Natalie screamed, the tears finally spilling over. "It's about us. We can adopt. We can use a surrogate. There are options." "I don't want options. I want my blood," he spat. "And I already have a solution." The double doors to the study opened. The clicking of high heels on the hardwood floor was sharp and rhythmic. Natalie froze. Tiffany walked in. She was Natalie's cousin. Or she had been once. Blonde, statuesque, and currently wearing a silk robe that Natalie recognized it was the one she had bought for her anniversary last month. "Tiffany," Natalie whispered, her stomach churning. "What are you doing here?" Tiffany didn't look at Natalie. She walked straight to Rachel, sliding her hand possessively onto his chest. Rachel covered her hand with his own, looking at her with a warmth he hadn't shown Natalie in years. "Tiffany is pregnant, Natalie," Rachel announced, his voice devoid of shame. "It's a boy. My son." The air left the room. Natalie looked between them, the husband she adored and the cousin she had treated like a sister. You've been sleeping together. For 6 months," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with faux sympathy. "I didn't want to hurt you, Nat. But Rachel deserves a real woman. A woman who works. We couldn't keep denying what was clearly meant to be." "You're disgusting," Natalie hissed, stepping forward. "Both of you." Rachel stepped between them, his hand raising in a warning gesture. "Careful. That's the mother of my heir you're speaking to. Unlike you, she has value here." He walked back to the desk, pulled a check out of the drawer, and flicked it toward Natalie. It fluttered to the floor, landing near her muddy boots. 500,000, Rachel said. Consider it severance pay for the 5 years. Pack your things. I want you out of the house by noon. Tiffany is moving into the master suite, and she doesn't want your smell lingering on the sheets. You can't do this, Natalie gasped. This is my house too. My name is on the deed. Rachel laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Read the prenup again, darling, the one you signed without a lawyer because you trusted me. If there is no issue produced within 5 years, the marriage can be annulled with a fixed settlement. Today is exactly 5 years and 1 day. I've been waiting for the clock to run out. He checked his Rolex, a gift she had bought him for his 30th birthday. You have 45 minutes before security escorts you out. Don't make a scene, Natalie. It's pathetic enough as it is. Natalie looked at the check on the floor. It was enough money to survive, sure. But it was blood money. It was the price of her dignity. She didn't pick it up. She turned around, head high despite the tears blurring her vision, and walked out of the study. She could hear Tiffany's giggle as the door closed behind her. Broken, defective, useless. The words chased her up the grand staircase as she blindly threw clothes into a suitcase. She didn't take the jewelry. She didn't take the designer bags he had bought her as apologies for missed dinners. She took only what she had come with her clothes, her mother's locket, and her pride. 40 minutes later, the heavy oak front doors slammed shut behind her. The weather reflected her soul. The sky over Greenwich had turned a bruised purple, and the rain was coming down in sheets, cold and unforgiving. Natalie dragged her suitcase down the long driveway. Rachel hadn't even let the driver take her to the station. She was walking. As she reached the iron gates, she heard the balcony doors open above. She looked back. Rachel and Tiffany were standing there, champagne flutes in hand, watching her leave like she was the entertainment for the evening. "Don't come back begging when the money runs out," Rachel shouted over the rain. Natalie turned away, her heart fracturing into a million pieces. She walked until her legs burned, until the expensive cobblestone of the private estate gave way to the public asphalt of the main road. She was drenched, her hair plastered to her face, her dress ruined. She sat on her suitcase at the bus stop, shivering. She had nowhere to go. Her parents had passed away 3 years ago. The friends she had. They were Rachel's friends. They would side with the money. They always did. She felt a vibration in her pocket. She pulled out her phone. A notification from the bank. Alert. Joint account ending in 8842 has been frozen. She stared at the screen. He had frozen the accounts. She hadn't picked up the check. She had 0 cash. "Checkmate," she whispered to the rain. Just then, a pair of blinding headlights cut through the darkness. A car was approaching slowly. It wasn't a taxi, and it wasn't a bus. It was a matte black Rolls-Royce Phantom, its grille looking like the teeth of a predator. It slowed down as it neared the bus stop, the tires hissing on the wet pavement. Natalie tensed. This was a lonely road. She grabbed the handle of her suitcase, ready to run into the woods if she had to. The car stopped directly in front of her. The back window glided down silently. The interior was warm, glowing with soft amber light. Sitting in the back seat was a man who looked like he had been carved out of darkness and marble. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her father's bakery. His hair was black, swept back, and his eyes were the color of storm clouds, grey and piercing. He was looking at her, not with lust, not with pity, but with recognition. "You're Natalie Sinclair," the man said. His voice was a deep baritone, smooth, like aged whiskey, but with a dangerous edge. It's Natalie. Wait, who are you? She gripped her suitcase tighter. If you're a reporter, I have nothing to say. The man smirked, a faint curve of his lips that didn't reach his eyes. I own the papers, Mrs. Sinclair. I don't read them. The passenger door opened. A massive bodyguard with a scar running down his cheek stepped out holding a black umbrella. He walked over to Natalie and held it over her, shielding her from the downpour. My name is Lorenzo, the man in the car said. Lorenzo Moretti. Natalie froze. Everyone in New York knew that name. The Moretti family. They owned construction firms, shipping lines, and half the politicians in the state. Rumors whispered of other things, to gambling enforcement, the Mafia. What do you want with me? She asked, her voice trembling. I saw what happened, Lorenzo said, nodding toward the distant gates of Rachel's estate. Rachel abandoned you, replaced you. Are you stalking me? I keep an eye on my investments, Lorenzo said cryptically. Your husband owes me a great deal of money, Natalie. Money he borrowed to build that tech empire he loves so much. He used you as the emotional collateral to get the loan painting a picture of a stable family man. Lorenzo leaned forward, his grey eyes locking onto hers. Now that he has tossed you aside, he has become unstable. And I don't like unstable investments. I can't help you, Natalie said, shivering violently now. I have nothing. I'm infertile. I'm broke. I'm nobody. Lorenzo opened the door from the inside. The leather seat looked incredibly inviting. You are not nobody, Natalie. You are the woman who knows where the bodies are buried at Vanguard Tech. You know his tax evasions. You know his offshore accounts. She hesitated. She did know. She had done the books in the early days. I am offering you a deal, Lorenzo said. Come with me. I will give you a dry set of clothes, a warm meal, and a lawyer who will make Rachel wish he had never been born. In exchange, you help me dismantle him. Natalie looked at the open door. Then she looked back down the road toward the house, where the man she loved was currently celebrating her eviction with her cousin. She looked at the infertile diagnosis in her mind. She looked at the frozen bank account notification. Why? She asked. Why help me? Lorenzo's expression darkened. Because I despise men who mistreat loyalty, and because I have a feeling, Doctor, Sterling's diagnosis might have been purchased. Natalie's breath hitched. What? Come with me, Lorenzo repeated, extending a hand. His hand was large, scarred at the knuckles but steady. Get in the car, Natalie. Leave the girl who was a victim in the rain. Become the woman who takes everything back. The rain pounded against the umbrella. Natalie looked at his hand. It was a hand of the devil, surely. But the angels had abandoned her long ago. She reached out and took his hand. His grip was warm and firm. He pulled her into the car. The door closed, shutting out the rain, the cold, and her past life. To the penthouse, Lorenzo said to the driver, and call Dr. Halloway. I want a second opinion immediately. As the Rolls-Royce pulled away, Natalie sank into the leather. She caught her reflection in the darkened window. She looked like a drowned rat, but her eyes were burning. She wasn't just a discarded wife anymore. She was Lorenzo Moretti's problem now, and soon she would be Rachel's nightmare. The penthouse at the top of the Moretti spire was less of a home and more of a fortress in the sky. Rain lashed against floor-to-ceiling windows, that offered a panoramic view of a city that looked small and insignificant from this height. Natalie sat on the edge of a velvet examination table in a private medical suite located within the penthouse. She was wrapped in a cashmere robe Lorenzo had provided her wet clothes having been discarded hours ago. Dr. Holloway, a woman with sharp features and grey hair, pulled back in a severe bun, typed commands into a tablet. The silence in the room was deafening. Lorenzo stood in the corner, arms crossed, his presence filling the room despite his silence. "Well," Lorenzo's voice cut through the quiet. Dr. Holloway lowered the tablet and looked at Natalie over the rim of her glasses. "Mrs. Sinclair, how long have you been taking Folitrax?" Natalie blinked, confused. "Folitrax? No, I don't take that. I just take the prenatal vitamins my cousin Tiffany recommended. She said they were organic, imported from Switzerland to help prepare my body." Lorenzo stepped forward, his eyes narrowing. "Tiffany given to you?" "Yes," Natalie whispered. "For 2 years, every morning with my smoothie." Dr. Holloway sighed, a sound of professional frustration. She turned the tablet screen toward Natalie. It showed a graph with a red line spiking off the chart. "Those weren't vitamins, dear," Dr. Holloway said bluntly. "We ran a full toxicology screen. Your blood is saturated with a synthetic hormone blocker, usually used for chemical castration in severe medical cases or, simply put, high-grade long-term contraception." The room spun. Natalie gripped the edge of the table. "What? You aren't infertile?" The doctor continued, her voice softening slightly. "Your reproductive system has been chemically induced into a coma. If you stop taking these pills immediately and undergo a flush treatment, your fertility should return to normal levels within 6 months. There is absolutely nothing wrong with you physically." A scream built up in Natalie's chest, but it couldn't escape. It just rattled inside her rib cage. Tiffany. She remembered Tiffany smiling as she handed her the pill organizer every week. "Just to make sure you're healthy, Nat. For the future baby." "They poisoned me." Natalie choked out, tears hot and fast streaming down her face. "My own cousin. My husband. He must have known. He paid for them." "He knew," Lorenzo said. His voice was a low growl like thunder rolling in the distance. "Rachel needed a reason to discard you that wouldn't void the prenup. If he divorced you for no reason, you'd get half. But if the marriage failed due to lack of issue, he kept everything. He didn't just cheat on you, Natalie. He systematically sterilized you to rob you of your settlement." Natalie slid off the table, her legs giving way. She expected to hit the floor, but strong arms caught her. Lorenzo held her up, pulling her against his chest. He smelled of rain, expensive cologne, and danger. For the first time in 5 years, she felt safe. "I'm going to kill him," she sobbed into his suit jacket. "I'm going to kill them both." "No," Lorenzo said, his hand stroking the back of her head, soothing her while his eyes burned with a cold, terrifying light over her shoulder. "Death is too easy. Death is a mercy. We don't give mercy to people like Rachel and Tiffany." He pulled back, gripping her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. His grey eyes were intense, locking onto hers. "You are going to rest tonight," Lorenzo commanded. "You are going to let the poison leave your body, and tomorrow we stop crying. Tomorrow we start planning. They took your womb. They took your home. They took your pride. We are going to take their future." "Why?" Natalie asked again, her voice raw. "Why do this for me, Lorenzo? You're a mob boss. You're supposed to be the villain." Lorenzo's expression softened just a fraction. He reached into his pocket and pulled out an old, worn photograph. He handed it to her. It was a picture of a younger Lorenzo standing next to a smiling woman who looked vaguely like him. "My sister Julia," Lorenzo said quietly. "She was married to a man like Rachel, a man who gaslit her, made her believe she was crazy, made her believe she was worthless. By the time I found out what was happening, she had taken her own life." Natalie gasped, looking from the photo to the hardened man before her. "I was too late for Julia," Lorenzo said, taking the photo back and placing it near his heart. "I will burn this city to ash before I let another man destroy a good woman like that. You are not a charity case, Natalie. You are my redemption." He turned to the doctor. "Start the flush treatment. Whatever she needs, money is no object." As the IV line was prepped to clear the poison from her veins, Natalie looked out the window at the stormy skyline. The lightning flashed, illuminating the city where Rachel was sleeping soundly, thinking he had won. "Sleep tight, Rachel," she thought, "because when I wake up, your nightmare begins." 3 months passed. The woman who looked back at Natalie in the mirror was unrecognizable from the drenched, broken creature who had sat at the bus stop. The flush treatment had worked. Her skin, once pale and sallow from the hormones, now glowed with health. Her hair, which she had chopped into a sleek, sharp bob that framed her jawline, shone like obsidian. But the biggest change wasn't physical. It was in her eyes. The soft, pleading look of a wife trying to please her husband was gone. In its place was the sharp, calculating gaze of a predator. She walked out of her bedroom suite into the main living area of the penthouse. The floor was covered in files, not medical files, corporate ones. Lorenzo was sitting on the sofa, a glass of bourbon in hand, watching her. He had given her access to his team of forensic accountants, and for the last 90 days, Natalie had done nothing but study Vanguard Tech's financials. "You found it, didn't you?" Lorenzo asked, a smirk playing on his lips. Natalie dropped a file onto the coffee table. "It wasn't easy. Rachel is good at hiding things, but he's arrogant. He assumed no one would look at the shell companies in the Cayman Islands, registered under his mother's maiden name." She tapped the file with a manicured nail. "He's leveraging the company's assets to pay for his personal gambling debts and Tiffany's shopping sprees. He's technically embezzling from his own shareholders. If this gets out, the SEC shuts him down and the stock price goes to 0. "We could leak it," Lorenzo suggested, testing her. "Destroy him by morning." "No," Natalie said, her voice cool. "If we leak it, he goes to jail maybe. But he still has his hidden cash. I don't want him in jail. I want him destitute. I want him to feel the panic of having nothing." She walked over to the window. "Next week is the Obsidian Gala. It's the biggest charity event of the year. Rachel is the keynote speaker. He's going to announce the IPO of his new subsidiary. That's where he's planning to secure the capital to cover his embezzlement tracks." And Lorenzo stood up, walking up behind her. The heat of his body was distracting, but she didn't pull away. Over the last 3 months, a tension had built between them, a silent electric current that neither had acknowledged, but both felt. "And?" Natalie turned to face him. "I want to go. I want to buy the majority of the shares in the subsidiary before it goes public, using the shell company you set up for me. I want to walk in there on his arm, well, on your arm, and introduce myself as his new boss." Lorenzo laughed. It was a rich, genuine sound that transformed his face. "You want to perform a hostile takeover in a ball gown. Is that a problem?" "It's perfect," Lorenzo murmured. He reached out his fingers, grazing her cheek. "You are dangerous, Natalie. I think I created a monster." "You didn't create me, Lorenzo," she whispered, leaning into his touch slightly. "You just dusted me off." Lorenzo's thumb traced her lower lip. The air in the room grew heavy. He leaned in his grey eyes, searching hers for permission. When she didn't retreat, he closed the distance. The kiss was searing. It wasn't genital. It was a collision of two people who had been dancing around fire for months. His hands tangled in her hair, pulling her closer while hers gripped the lapels of his shirt. It tasted of bourbon and vengeance. When they finally broke apart, breathless, Lorenzo rested his forehead against hers. If we go to this gala together, Natalie, there is no going back. The world will know you are with me. You will be marked as a Moretti woman. That comes with a target on your back. I've been a target my whole life, Natalie said firmly. At least with you, I'm the one holding the gun. Lorenzo stepped back, straightening his jacket, though his eyes were still dark with desire. Then we have work to do. My stylist is coming at noon. I took the liberty of ordering a dress. Red. Red. Natalie raised an eyebrow. The color of war, Lorenzo said, walking toward his office. And the color of blood. The week leading up to the gala was a blur of strategy. Lorenzo's connections in the banking world allowed Natalie to quietly corner the market on Rachel's debt. She bought the promissory notes from the banks Rachel had borrowed from. Technically, she now owned his mortgage, his car loans, and the massive business loan he had taken out to pay off the initial investors. Meanwhile, reports from Lorenzo's spies painted a grim picture of life at the Greenwich estate. Tiffany was miserable. The heir had turned out to be a colicky baby who cried all night, and Tiffany, who had never worked a day in her life, was overwhelmed. Rachel was never home, spending his nights at casinos or late meetings, leaving his mistress-turned-wife to handle the domestic chaos alone. The fantasy romance had crumbled under the weight of reality. She called your old number yesterday, Lorenzo told Natalie over breakfast. Twice. Tiffany called me. Natalie paused, her fork hovering over her melon. Probably to complain, or to ask for help. She doesn't know the number is disconnected, Lorenzo said. She's realized that stealing a husband leaves you with a cheater. Natalie put her fork down. Let her rot. On the night of the Obsidian Gala, Natalie stood before the full-length mirror. The dress Lorenzo had chosen was spectacular, a deep blood-red silk that clung to her curves like a second skin, with a slit that went up to her thigh, and a back that plunged dangerously low. She wore diamond drop earrings that caught the light with every movement, a gift from Lorenzo that morning. Ready? Lorenzo stood in the doorway. He was wearing a tuxedo that fit him perfectly, a black velvet bow tie, adding a touch of old-world elegance. He looked devastatingly handsome. He stopped when he saw her. For a moment, the ruthless Mafia boss was speechless. You look... He cleared his throat. You look like a queen who is about to order an execution. Natalie smiled a cold, sharp smile. She picked up a clutch purse. Inside was a USB drive containing the evidence of Rachel's fraud and the legal documents proving she now owned his debt. Shall we? She asked. Lorenzo offered his arm. After you, Mrs. Moretti. Or should I say the future CEO of Vanguard Tech? Let's stick with Natalie for tonight, she said, taking his arm. I want to see the look on his face when he realizes the barren wife he threw out is the one holding the keys to his kingdom. They walked to the private elevator. As the doors closed, Natalie took a deep breath. The victim was dead. Tonight, the Avenger was born. The grand ballroom of the Pierre Hotel was a sea of black ties and glittering designer gowns. The air smelled of expensive perfume and even more expensive desperation. This was where the city's elite came to measure each other's net worth. Rachel Sinclair stood near the champagne fountain, forcing a smile as he shook hands with a potential investor. Beside him, Tiffany shifted uncomfortably. She was wearing a dress that was 2 sizes too small, a desperate attempt to prove her post-baby body had bounced back, though the strain on the fabric suggested otherwise. She looked tired. Her blonde hair was frizzy, the humidity of the stormy night having ruined her blowout, and her eyes were darting around the room nervously. "Stop fidgeting," Rachel hissed under his breath, gripping her elbow tightly. "You're making me look bad. Smile. Senator Caldwell is looking this way." "My feet hurt, Rachel," Tiffany whined. "And the nanny texted, 'The baby has a fever again. We should go.'" "We are not going anywhere," Rachel snapped, his veneer of charm cracking. "I have to announce the Vanguard IPO in 20 minutes. If I don't secure the anchor investors tonight, the loan interest will eat us alive next month. Just stand there and look pretty. It's the only thing you're good at." Tiffany flinched, tears welling in her eyes. "You never spoke to Natalie like that." "Natalie knew how to behave in public," Rachel muttered, turning away from her to flag down a waiter. Suddenly, the hum of conversation in the ballroom died down. It started near the entrance, a hush that spread like a wave across the room. The string quartet even faltered, missing a beat. Heads turned. Whispers erupted. Rachel frowned and looked toward the grand staircase. Who is making an entrance this late? Then he saw them. At the top of the stairs stood Lorenzo Moretti. He was a figure of pure intimidation, his tuxedo cutting a sharp silhouette against the gold leaf decor. But it wasn't Lorenzo who stole the oxygen from the room. It was the woman on his arm. She was a vision in blood-red silk. The dress flowed over her body like liquid fire, the slit revealing a leg toned to perfection. Her hair was a sharp, dark helmet of gloss, and her face was striking. Rachel squinted. He knew that walk. He knew the curve of that neck. But it was impossible. "Is that—" Tiffany gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "Is that Natalie?" "No," Rachel said, his voice shaking slightly. "Natalie is in a shelter somewhere. She's broke. That woman is... She's wearing $100,000 worth of diamonds." Natalie and Lorenzo began to descend the stairs. Every eye was on them. The paparazzi, usually kept behind a velvet rope, went into a frenzy, their flashes creating a stroboscopic effect around the couple. As they reached the bottom of the stairs, the crowd parted for them like the Red Sea. Lorenzo guided Natalie straight through the center of the room, heading directly toward the VIP section, toward Rachel. Rachel felt a cold sweat break out on his forehead. He straightened his tie, his heart hammering against his ribs. Natalie stopped 3 feet away from him. Up close, she was even more breathtaking. The mousy, eager-to-please wife he had discarded was gone. This woman looked like she could eat him alive. "Hello, Rachel," Natalie said. Her voice was cool, smooth, and carried enough projection that half the room heard her. "Natalie," Rachel choked out. What are you doing here? How did you get in?" "I'm on the board," she said simply. "The board? What board?" "The charity board." Rachel laughed nervously, looking around for support. "You don't have the money for a ticket, let alone a board seat." "The board of Moretti Global," Lorenzo interjected, stepping slightly in front of her. He loomed over Rachel, making the tech CEO look small and soft. "And she is my guest." The color drained from Rachel's face. "Moretti, you're with him." "I'm with the man who picked me up off the side of the road where you left me," Natalie said. her voice dropping an octave, becoming dangerous. She looked at Tiffany. "Hello, cousin. You look exhausted. Motherhood, not quite the fairy tale you thought it would be." Tiffany looked down, ashamed. "Nat, save it." Natalie cut her off. She turned back to Rachel. "I hear you're making a big announcement tonight. The Vanguard IPO." "Yes," Rachel said, puffing out his chest, trying to regain his composure. "We're going public. The stock is projected to open at $40 a share. I'm going to be a billionaire by morning, Natalie. You walked away too soon." "I didn't walk away, Rachel. I was thrown out," she corrected him loud enough for the senator nearby to hear. "But you're right about the IPO. It's a fascinating prospectus. I read it this morning." "It's confidential until midnight," Rachel snapped. "Not to the majority shareholder." Natalie smiled. It was a terrifying smile. "What are you talking about? I'm the majority shareholder." "Were," Lorenzo corrected. "As of 4:00 p.m. today, Titan Holdings acquired 51% of the private equity debt you used to leverage the expansion. And since you missed your last 2 interest payments while buying your mistress a Porsche," Lorenzo gestured to Natalie, "my partner here executed the default clause." Rachel stumbled back as if he'd been punched. "Titan Holdings, that's a shell company." "My shell company," Natalie said softly. "I own your debt, Rachel, which means I own your assets, which means I own Vanguard." The room was dead silent now. The drama was better than any opera. "You can't," Rachel whispered. "That's illegal. I'll sue." "Read the fine print of the loan agreement you signed with the Cayman banks," Natalie said, stepping closer. "Invader his personal space. Section 4, paragraph C. In the event of default, the lender reserves the right to convert debt to equity at a discounted rate. I converted it, Rachel. All of it." She reached out and adjusted his bow tie, a mocking gesture of intimacy. "Enjoy your speech," she whispered, "but don't announce the IPO. I cancelled it an hour ago." She turned on her heel, the red dress swirling around her legs. "Come on, Lorenzo. The air in here smells like cheap cologne and bad decisions." Lorenzo gave Rachel one last look, a look of pure pity, and then turned to follow her. Rachel stood frozen. The microphone on the stage screeched with feedback, waiting for a speech he could no longer give. Around him, the whispers turned into laughter. The next morning, the sky was a brilliant, cloudless blue, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged inside Rachel Sinclair's life. He hadn't slept. He had spent the night screaming at lawyers, all of whom told him the same thing. "It's ironclad. She owns you." He stormed into the headquarters of Vanguard Tech at 8 Honduras a.m. He needed to get into his office. He needed to shred the documents in the safe, the ones that proved the embezzlement, the ones that linked him to the doctor who had prescribed the vitamins. He swiped his badge at the executive elevator. Access denied. He swiped it again. A red light blinked mockingly. "There must be a glitch," he muttered, slamming his hand against the panel. "There is no glitch, Mr. Sinclair." Rachel spun around. 2 large security guards were standing in the lobby. He recognized them. He had hired them. "Open the elevator," Rachel commanded. "I am the CEO of this company." "Former CEO," a voice called out from the mezzanine balcony. Rachel looked up. Natalie was standing there, leaning against the glass railing. She was wearing a sharp white pantsuit that made her look like an avenging angel. Lorenzo stood in the shadows behind her, silent and watchful. "Natalie!" Rachel shouted, his voice echoing in the marble lobby. "Stop this madness. We can talk. We can make a deal." "Come up to the boardroom," Natalie called down. Security escort him, and check him for weapons." 5 minutes later, Rachel was shoved into the boardroom, the same room where he had built his empire. Natalie sat at the head of the long oak table. His seat, Lorenzo sat to her right. To her left was a stack of files. "Sit," Natalie commanded. Rachel sank into a guest chair, looking deflated. "Natalie, listen. I know you're angry. You have every right to be. But destroying the company destroys your payout, too. Let's be rational. I can give you half. I can give you the house back." "I don't want the house," Natalie said, opening a file. "I have a penthouse now, and I don't want half. I want justice." She slid a photo across the table. It was the pill bottle of Folitrax. Rachel went pale. "I know," she said simply. "I know you poisoned me. I know you paid Dr. Sterling to falsify my records. I didn't. Don't lie." Natalie slammed her hand on the table. "We have the bank transfers, Rachel. We have Sterling's confession. He rolled on you the moment Lorenzo's lawyers paid him a visit." Rachel slumped in his chair, burying his face in his hands. "I needed an heir, Natalie. You were taking too long. The investors were getting nervous about the succession plan." "So you sterilized me?" she asked, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "You stole my ability to be a mother just to save your stock price." "I didn't think it would be permanent," Rachel cried. "It was just supposed to stop you from conceiving, so I had grounds for the annulment." "You played God with my body," Natalie said, her voice icy. "And now I am playing God with your life." She pressed a button on the intercom. "Send her in." The door opened. Tiffany walked in. She was carrying the baby in a carrier, looking disheveled and terrified. She had a black eye, fresh, likely from the night before. "Tiffany." Rachel looked up. "What are you doing here?" Tiffany didn't look at him. She walked straight to Natalie and fell to her knees. "Please," Tiffany sobbed. "Please, Nat. I didn't know about the money stuff. I just wanted to be loved. He hit me last night. He blamed me for everything. I have nowhere to go. He drained our joint account." Natalie looked at her cousin, the woman who had betrayed her in the worst way possible. Then she looked at the baby, sleeping in the carrier. An innocent child caught in a war of greedy adults. "Get up," Natalie said. "Will you help me?" Tiffany begged. "I'll testify against him. I'll tell everyone about the pills. I saw him crushing them into your smoothies once, I swear." "You knew," Natalie said. "Don't pretend you didn't." Tiffany sobbed harder. Natalie sighed. She wrote something on a piece of paper and slid it to Tiffany. "This is the address of a women's shelter in Vermont. It's fully funded by the Moretti Foundation. They will give you a room, food, and legal aid to file for custody and a restraining order." "Thank you," Tiffany wept, grabbing the paper. "Thank you, Nat." "I'm not doing it for you," Natalie said coldly. "I'm doing it for the baby. Now get out of my sight. If I see you again, I won't be so generous." Tiffany scrambled out of the room, clutching her child. Now it was just Rachel. "You took my wife. You took my money." Rachel sneered, his fear turning into hate. "What's left?" "Are you going to kill me, Moretti?" He looked at Lorenzo. Lorenzo leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table. "I promised Natalie I wouldn't kill you. It would be too quick." Natalie stood up. "You are fired, Rachel, for cause, embezzlement, corporate fraud, and moral turpitude." "You can't fire me. I built this, and I funded it," Natalie shouted back. "My father's bakery money started this company, and now I am ending your tenure." She tossed a final document at him. The SEC is waiting in the lobby, along with the district attorney. We handed over the evidence of the embezzlement this morning. You're looking at 15 to 20 years in federal prison." Rachel's eyes bulged. He scrambled up, running toward the window, looking for an escape, but there was nowhere to go. The doors burst open. Federal agents in windbreakers swarmed the room. "Rachel Sinclair, you are under arrest," an agent barked, spinning him around and slamming him against the table. As the cuffs clicked shut, Rachel looked at Natalie one last time. "You loved me once?" he pleaded. Natalie looked at him, her grey eyes dry and clear. She felt for the locket around her neck, the one thing she had kept. "I loved the man I thought you were," she said. "But that man never existed." "Take him away," Lorenzo commanded. As Rachel was dragged out, screaming obscenities, silence fell over the boardroom. Natalie stood there, her hands shaking slightly. It was done. The monster was in a cage. The traitor was exiled. Lorenzo stood up and walked over to her. He didn't say a word. He just wrapped his arms around her from behind, resting his chin on her shoulder. They stood there together, looking out over the city. "Is it enough?" Lorenzo asked softly. Natalie took a deep breath. "It's a start." But as she looked at her reflection in the glass, she felt a wave of nausea. She grabbed the back of the chair to steady herself. "Natalie," Lorenzo's voice turned sharp with worry. "Are you okay? I feel a bit dizzy," she whispered. "I've been feeling off all week. Probably just the stress." Lorenzo spun her around, his hand flying to her forehead. "You're warm. We're going to the doctor." "I'm fine, Lorenzo. Really." "No arguments," he said, picking her up, bridal style. "We won the war. I'm not losing the Queen." The sterile smell of the hospital room was a stark contrast to the wood and leather of the boardroom. Natalie sat on the edge of the bed, her legs dangling, her mind a fog of anxiety. Lorenzo had not sat down for an hour. He paced the length of the private suite at Mount Sinai, his phone buzzing incessantly with calls from his lawyers handling the fallout of Rachel's arrest. He ignored them all. "Lorenzo, please stop pacing," Natalie said softly. "I told you it's just stress. The adrenaline crash after months of fighting." Lorenzo stopped and looked at her. His eyes, usually so cold and guarded, were filled with a raw, terrifying vulnerability. "I lost my sister to stress, Natalie. I lost her because we ignored the signs. I am not losing you." The door opened. Dr. Holloway walked in holding a clipboard. Her face was unreadable. Natalie's heart hammered against her ribs. "Is it bad? Is there permanent damage from the poison?" Dr. Holloway adjusted her glasses and looked from Lorenzo to Natalie. "We ran the blood work 3 times just to be sure. Given your medical history over the last year, the high dosage of Folitrax, the subsequent flush treatment, what I'm looking at, shouldn't be statistically possible." Lorenzo stepped forward, his voice low and dangerous. "Speak plainly, doctor. What is wrong with her?" "Nothing is wrong, Mr. Moretti." "Doctor," Holloway said, a small smile finally breaking through her professional mask. "In fact, everything is perfectly right." She turned the clipboard around. "Your HCG levels are through the roof, Natalie. You aren't sick. You're 8 weeks pregnant." The silence that fell over the room was heavier than the storm that had brought them together. Natalie stared at the doctor. "No, that's impossible. The report. Rachel said I was broken. Even with the flush, you said it would take 6 months to even try. The human body is resilient specifically when it is no longer being poisoned," Dr. Holloway explained gently. The flush cleared your system faster than we anticipated, and, well, nature found a way. Natalie's hand drifted to her stomach. She thought of the dizziness, the fatigue, the nausea she had blamed on the takeover. She looked at Lorenzo. The feared Mafia boss, the man who could crush a corporation with a phone call, looked like he had been struck by lightning. He walked over to the bed slowly, as if afraid the floor might give way. "A baby," he whispered, his voice cracking. "A baby." Natalie cried, the tears finally coming. Not tears of grief, but of overwhelming, impossible joy. Lorenzo fell to his knees beside the bed. He buried his face in her lap, his large hands covering hers over her stomach. For the first time, Natalie felt his shoulders shake. He was weeping. The ghost of his sister, the weight of his violent life, it all seemed to wash away in the face of this new life. "He threw you away," Lorenzo murmured into her dress. "He threw you away because he thought you were barren. And now we have everything he wanted." Natalie finished stroking Lorenzo's hair. "And we have everything we deserved." 1 year later, the sun was setting over New York City, casting a golden glow over the terrace of the Moretti-Sinclair Tower. Natalie stood by the railing, rocking a stroller back and forth. Inside, 6-month-old Leo was fast asleep, his dark hair a perfect match for his father's. Life had changed. Vanguard Tech had been rebranded and absorbed into the Moretti empire. Natalie ran the charitable division, focusing on helping women escape abusive marriages. As for Rachel, Natalie took a sip of her iced tea and glanced at the newspaper on the patio table. Disgraced CEO, sentenced to 25 years. Rachel Sinclair, former head of Vanguard Tech, was sentenced today for massive fraud, embezzlement, and assault. His plea for leniency was denied. There was a picture of him in an orange jumpsuit, looking 10 years older, hollow and broken. He had lost the company. He had lost the money. He had lost the legacy. And somewhere in a small apartment in Vermont, Tiffany was raising her son alone, safe but humble, working as a receptionist. She sent Natalie a card every Christmas. Natalie never replied, but she didn't return them either. Thinking about the past, Natalie turned. Lorenzo walked onto the terrace. He had traded his stark black suits for a softer navy linen shirt, sleeves rolled up. He looked lighter, happier. "No," Natalie smiled, looking down at their son. "I was just thinking about how grateful I am for the rain." "The rain?" Lorenzo asked, wrapping his arms around her waist and kissing her neck. "The rain that night," she said, leaning back into him. "If he hadn't thrown me out in the storm, if I hadn't sat at that bus stop, I never would have seen your headlights." Lorenzo rested his chin on her shoulder, looking at the sleeping baby. "I didn't save you, Natalie. You saved me. I was a man walking in the dark until I found you." "We saved each other," she whispered. Below them, the city lights began to twinkle on millions of lives being lived. But up here in their fortress, they had won the only game that mattered. The barren wife was a mother. The villain was a father. And the man who wanted to be a king was rotting in a cage of his own making. Natalie Moretti smiled, turned off the baby monitor, and kissed her husband. The best revenge wasn't destroying Rachel. The best revenge was being happy without him. And that is the incredible story of Natalie and Lorenzo, from being thrown out into the rain and told she was useless to taking over the empire and building a family with the man who truly valued her. This is the definition of hard karma. Rachel got exactly what he deserved, a lonely cell and the knowledge that his infertile wife gave a son to his enemy. What do you think? Did Rachel deserve a harsher punishment, or is 25 years in prison enough justice? And would you have forgiven Tiffany if you were in Natalie's shoes? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of revenge, romance, and justice, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next dramatic story. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.